Thank you, Daniel. The next session is we're going to focus on what the latest political developments in Europe, the European elections, signify for the EU's eastwards enlargement. And to address that question, I'm delighted to welcome Dorin Recean, Prime Minister of Moldova. Welcome, Prime Minister.
Dear Nectaria, President Radev, President Gül, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guest, it's a great honor for me to address today's annual Economist Government Roundtable. And this question, what do the European elections signify for Western Balkans and Eastern Europe, is as important as ever. We have to look at these results in the context, and obviously from the Moldovan perspective, this is from one side a cautious optimism that we are seeing, and from the other side is a kind of a rehearsal. I will explain a little bit later why. We see that the parliament moved to the right. We have to see to what extent the policies and where shall they move if. And I will not comment on the election results themselves, as I do believe that this is the expression of the will of the people, and obviously results change inevitably every few years, as just they are meant to reflect the changes in the concerns and expectations of our people. Though I think that a thorough analysis of the malign influence and election interference should be done in order to assess to what extent people's sentiment is a reflection of reality or is influenced by propaganda, disinformation, and false promises, and altogether. Moldova's path to independence was paved in the early 90s in the streets, with thousands and thousands of people rally demanding under Soviet occupation for freedom and sovereignty. Some might even say democracy itself arrived rather unexpectedly with the fall of the Soviet Union. But as a young democracy, we have come to value our freedoms and celebrate our elections. And in these European elections, nearly 50,000 of our nationals within Moldova that hold EU citizenship actively participated in the elections at the polling stations opened in Moldova, and voted overwhelmingly the pro-European parties. And we call pro-European parties those that understand that a larger Europe is a more peaceful, secure, and prosperous Europe. I was mentioning that these were also rehearsal, a preparation for the day when all Moldovans will have a say in the future of the European Union, a shared future for our continent and unity in Europe. When our country holds national elections, hundreds of thousands of Moldovans worldwide travels hours and hundreds of kilometers to polling stations to exercise their freedom of choice. Few events unite our diaspora like the election day, a day when they get to decide the future of our country. And that is a reason for celebration as well. Yet, too many still take democracy for granted, and in today's world, it's important not to forget that having a voice and a vote is especially valuable. New technologies are being used to divide us, and while Ukrainians cannot afford to hold elections, for the Kremlin, they simply just don't seem to matter anymore. Moldova has been the country most affected by the war after Ukraine, and we still receive a lot of unsolicited attention from Kremlin. Moldova is safe and peaceful thanks to the bravery and sacrifices of Ukraine, and I would like to extend our Moldovans' gratitude to Ukraine and to Ukrainian people for keeping peace, security, not only in Moldova, but on the continent, including in the Baltic countries. And however, the broader conflict impacts all of Europe. Cyber attacks, informational warfare, and other attacks on democracies are felt everywhere, with the intention of undermining the democracies and interfering with our sovereign choices. Every day, Moldova's institutions are becoming stronger and more resilient towards new types of threats. But I believe that even in these terrible times, we must still seek ways to end the cycle of hatred and destruction, striving tirelessly for peace and unity. This war has no justification. No shift in borders can justify the hundreds of thousands of deaths. And while we cannot change the past, we can still shape a future where we live in peace. There is no alternative but to learn to coexist, and it is probably the greatest responsibility of politicians to pursue peace and prosperity with decency, never abandoning diplomacy, dialogue, and convergence. All wars share one common outcome. They eventually end with peace. But European wars have an immensely more valuable commonality. They end for good with the European Union. This war should be no different. Peace in Europe must prevail. We must learn from our mistakes and ensure this is the last war in Europe, maintaining unity around the values that matter most: freedom, prosperity, rule of law, and respect for human life. No other continent has endured as much war as Europe, only to emerge free, open, prosperous, and without borders. These values attract countries to the Union, and these values will outlive any dictator. Moldova already embraces these values. We're fighting corruption and reforming our justice, building a country that can maintain its own peace and security while contributing to those of the region, and at the same time, building the most digital and business-friendly country in Europe. The competition is tough, but we are determined to excel. I invite you all to come and see our progress, but also come visit us as a family. Ladies and gentlemen, today I stand before you not just as a Prime Minister of Moldova, but as a representative of a nation that is deeply committed to the European project. Moldova, Ukraine, and countries from the Western Balkans are part of the European family. It is not a question of if, but when we will join the Union. Our journey towards EU membership is not without its challenges, but great things don't come easy. Yet we remain determined to succeed. We believe that EU enlargement in Eastern Europe and Western Balkans is an investment in peace, ensuring freedom and safety for generations to come. We're ready and willing to contribute. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Prime Minister. We've talked a lot already this morning about elections, and of course Moldova has its own election coming up, a presidential election. You mentioned there that Moldova's been in the front line. It's very much in the front line of cyber attacks and information warfare and so on. Are you worried about whether that might be the case in the forthcoming election? To what degree is the country still polarized also between the pro-EU, which seems to be the majority, pro-EU forces, and there's obviously a pro-Russian faction as well in the country. So how do you see that election panning out?
Look, we're already seeing an escalation of the malign influence and a lot of propaganda and misinformation and false information about European Union, about the fact that we will be holding a referendum, a pro-EU referendum. The good thing is that Moldova is has a strong support for European Union. What Kremlin tries is to instill fear in the society. We have to know that the pro-Russian left, let's say the pro-Russian leaning left in the country collapsed under 20-25%, but we still hold 10 to 15% of people that still fear Russia. And this is what Russia is trying to weaponize and to use against our strategic goal of becoming an EU country. Moldova develops, the government develops its means to fight this propaganda, to fight this disinformation, I would call it war. And we are consolidating also the capabilities of home security apparatus so that we can ensure peace and stability in Moldova, as to create the background from one side to advance on implementing the acquis communautaire, but from the other side to make sure that we create the background for economic growth, as to deliver welfare for the people.
Yes, so you really emphasize the commitment of the government and the president to the EU accession process. You also mentioned that the challenges there as well. Moldova has made a lot of progress over the past 2 years in terms of these 9 steps that were set out, the reform agenda, towards adopting the acquis, the EU body of law. But there is a cost to those reforms, and maybe in terms of high fiscal deficits, budget deficits, the need, which entails the need for more financial assistance. I just wanted to ask you a bit more about the economic position of the country at the moment. Still very much dependent on international assistance, but at the same time, the economy has been growing quite strongly.
We are very conscious that with the war immediately next door, as I mentioned, we are grateful to Ukraine and Ukrainians for the fact that we have peace and security, but then the sentiment of the investors, the sentiment of the consumers is still not there, and correspondingly our economy recovers, not according to the books. We are very cautious in terms of the fiscal deficits, though trying to invest as much as possible on the side of the government balance sheet into infrastructure, into various projects that will keep up the economy for the time being. Moldova, though, is also a very good place for opportunities for investments in energy and green transition, in infrastructure, in electronics. Please know that one of the largest actually company wine producing in Central and Eastern Europe is from Moldova and listed from the on the Bucharest Stock Exchange. We have a burgeoning and very strong IT industry, and we have an exponential growth, and actually the largest software producer in Eastern Europe is from Moldova and listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So we have all the factors to have a sustainable economic growth, and Moldova has the talent, Moldova has the innovation, and we're looking for the long-term capital to attract and to realize these opportunities.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. I saw recently that the EU ambassador to Moldova said that the EU would prefer Moldova to become an EU member with Transnistria, which is the breakaway region in Moldova, with an orientation to Russia. So I just wanted to ask about the Transnistria question and how this can be resolved, or can it be resolved peacefully? How do you see that in terms of Moldova's orientation to the EU and the accession process?
The reality is that we have aligned the Transnistrian region on our peace and security objectives, and we achieved so far the fact that more than 2/3 of the trade of the region is with European Union. So almost 90% of the trade is with the European Union and with the economic space of the country. So we're having right now an accelerated economic and social integration of the region into the whole of Moldova, and we see more and more willingness of people there to align with the whole of Moldova towards our European integration. And we have already set up a mechanism for the people on the left side, for de facto administration, to gradually adjust the legislation along with the central government.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but that's nice to end on a positive note about an issue that's been extremely troublesome for the country, but things moving in the right direction. So thank you very much.